And now all of this beyond that is truly a reminder that in this period, this fourth turning that we're in, and that I reference all of the time, courtesy of Mark Mitchell, by the way, a guy you should follow on X, who's now on his own. He left Rasmussen. There's going to be a whole story there I'm going to do on that. But Mark Mitchell turned me on, the head pollster at one time for Rasmussen, turned me on to this fourth turning. Excellent book. You should read it. Recognize that we're in it, and it'll help you see the future the way that I do. And if you don't want to, then just like the stream and subscribe for more content, because I talk about it all the time as it is. And you should do that anyway to support the channel. It's free. But in this fourth turning, the messaging here is simple. Nothing can stop it. Nothing will stop God's new plan from rising up. Not Trump, not Lindsey Graham, not the neocons. Okay? That's actually where we draw a little bit of inspiration in the death of a neocon like Lindsey Graham. Because we watched that election. We watched Trump publicly endorse a neocon, warmonger, Israel and Ukraine, really. Ukraine first and Israel first, foreign wars advocate. And it was another example of Trump betraying his MAGA base based off of what we voted for, as opposed to what we're now getting from him. I called it out then, and I'm reminding you of that now. And that was frustrating to deal with. It's been frustrating to watch these events like Thomas Massie, an America First, actual principled candidate, be ousted from his seat as a result of millions of dollars of Jewish donor money replacing him with Ed Galrain. Ed Galrain, an even worse possible example of Lindsey Graham. We'll see, time will tell. It's been frustrating. So when this happens, it's even more cause to celebrate, and that's really why you're seeing the people jumping for joy, because this just takes the power away. It reminds this wicked administration and this disgusting elite establishment that's now ruling over America that actually no, God is in charge. You may think you're in charge because you are tasked with making day-to-day decisions that influence all of us, and you may get your rocks off on this idea that even the will of the people no longer can make all of the decisions like our country was set up and intended for, and these people may think that they have some say in all of this. But no, actually. Lindsey Graham's death date, biblically, was signed before he was even born. And all of this is unfolding in accordance with God's will and plans. And that's that's perhaps what is the most amazing about all of this is they thought that they pulled it off this year. They thought that they got Lindsey Graham back in over Mark Lynch. Thank God that America First Mark Lynch guy didn't get the Senate seat. What a disaster that would have been. A Republican who actually wants to put America first. That means he would have voted against this Iran war in the Senate and defied Trump. Thank God we have Lindsey Graham in. No doubt this is what they were telling themselves. And now he's dead. He's gone. The boomers in general, this is a reminder that the boomers in general are always destined to age out of the system. They're gone. They're aging out of the system now. And over the course of the next 6, 8, 10, and 12 years, this will start to happen more frequently. The boomers who destroyed the old ways establishments, all of the traditionalism that made this country great, the nuclear family, and they took the great economy and destroyed it in the name of greed, and they worshipped Israel, and they loved foreign wars. Right? They drag race on our economy for their own gain at our expense. And they set up this new establishment now that corrupts and plagues our political system with nothing good comes from it. It is all against us now. And these boomers who did this, especially, and I'm talking especially about the politicians, they are dying off finally. They're aging out of the system. And with this notion, you recognize then that also means that their establishment that they set up is dissolving. That is all happening right now. But here's another reality check for you, because while we can momentarily recognize that and get all giddy about it, and we can do our little LARPing live action role play about how we're going to rise up now and take their place and restore this nation to glory, as much as I want that to be true, and as much as I believe in the possibility of that being the reality of America's future, and I am doing my part, or the best that I can right now, to work towards that, there is a reality check here. And that is that everyone is celebrating Lindsey Graham no longer being a burden to the Republican Party. But you have to recognize this. The establishment as it stands currently, though it may be dissolving, still has way too much control over everything. And this is really the biggest problem here. Because here's the deal here. What we're seeing now, what we're seeing as a result of Lindsey Graham dying suddenly, is we have now begun to see a narrative. I've seen it on my Twitter, on X. There's this narrative that's already been crafted beyond the conspiracies. That's happening too. I just already, in my opinion, hopefully shattered the idea that Russia killed Lindsey. Please, if you're on this channel, please look into it more and recognize that people just die, okay? First and foremost. But the actual narrative that is highlighting the new plan of the establishment going forward, the actual rhetoric emerging, is coming out in copy-paste form, which is how I know it's the new paid-for establishment narrative. And it's these GOP establishment shills and commentators and pundits on X posting virtually the same messaging about Nikki Haley. That's now the new Lindsey Graham, basically. And they're posting the same kind of stuff, and they're saying, well, I really don't like that Nikki Haley stood up against Trump. And I don't like that she was so critical back then. But if you really think about it, now that, sadly so, and God rest his soul, Lindsey Graham is gone, Nikki Haley really would be like the best replacement for Lindsey Graham, don't you think? I've seen this like 5 times already today. And that tells me that the establishment is paying these people to say that. So therefore, that's the new establishment narrative and rhetoric being pushed out. Nikki Haley should take Lindsey Graham's seat in Senate. Here's the deal with that. Nikki Haley is a massive hawk for Ukraine, just like Lindsey Graham was. She will literally be Lindsey Graham in 3-inch high heels. Perhaps even the same high heels that Lindsey Graham may or may not have worn in the privacy of his own home in Washington, D.C. She'll be Lindsey Graham in heels, and she pushes for more aid to Ukraine. In addition to that, she pushes all of the Israel worship. She loves the idea of supporting Israel still, unquestionably so. She wants the Ukraine war to continue going on against Russia. And worse yet, I don't care how this sounds, I've already done a video on it. She's now a woman who's rising up to take another position of power. And if you've been following me on this channel for any length of time, you know my stance on that. Women do not belong in politics. They don't belong in positions of leadership. And every time they obtain these positions, especially to a large degree, it is a sign of a biblical curse from God on a nation. There's no examples throughout history, really, of a woman in power with a nation that emerges better off for it. They are always a sign of a nation's decline, an empire's decline, a kingdom's decline. Always. Cleopatra, we have the Bible, we have Jezebel, we have Jezebel's wicked daughter, who is even worse. And the Bible itself is actually very clear in Isaiah chapter 12, verse 3, that women will rule over you, and your leaders, who are women, will cause you to err. So that's even worse. But all of it's bad, because she's just going to be female Lindsey Graham. So she has no redemptions. There's nothing redeeming about Nikki Haley. She's annoying, she's stupid, and she supports Israel and the aid to Israel, unquestionably, and she supports aid to Ukraine. So that's what they're asking for. And the fact that there are so many commentators out there pushing for this tells you that it's an establishment push by the wicked, corrupt, neoconservative establishment. Oh, let's get, I know Nikki Haley, she rubbed a lot of people the wrong way when she criticized Trump, but really think about it. She might actually be the most suitable replacement for Lindsey Graham. This tells you that we are still facing a massive uphill battle if you actually care about America, if you're actually America first, if you're an actual young conservative who recognizes that you can't possibly be liberal as a young man. Nowadays, if your testosterone is at least where it's supposed to be or higher, you cannot be a young man in America and a liberal. It's not possible. And so we recognize that the Conservative Party, in theory, is our party. It's the party for us, especially if you're white. But also, really, if you're smart enough to recognize it, if you're black as well. And in this case, too, I would even say some Hispanics, too, should recognize this. And I think they do. Not to go off on a side tangent here, but I actually think the Democrats recognize that the Hispanics recognize this, because the Democrats don't even really cater to the Hispanics anymore. They're like pushing for Somalians and Muslims and all these other third world countries to come in now, because they almost recognize, they're like, wait, you mean to tell us that 10 years later, after we welcomed all these Mexicans in, that they actually are Catholics that believe in a patriarchy, and so they actually may vote for us at first for the benefits, but then they actually get annoyed with us and start voting Republican? Oh, fuck that. We need to start letting people in from India and the Middle East then, and Somalia. And so understand that white men, black men, and Hispanic men are becoming more conservative because they see the writing on the wall. And especially white men. White men have pretty much always been conservative. So we recognize that the Conservative Party by default then is truthfully the vessel that we need to take control of in order to save America. And the establishment doesn't want that to happen, despite the fact, like I just explained, that establishment's dissolving. And the boomers that run it are dying out. They're aging out of existence. But just like in the fourth turning, which again, you got to read it, they are desperately holding on. And every time they squeeze harder, more sand. It's like holding on to sand. It slips out of their fingers, but it doesn't change the fact that they're just desperate to hold on to as much as they can for as long as possible. This is the ultimate sign of the fourth turning, too. And that's what they're doing now. And that's why they're pushing so hard and so fast for Nikki Haley. And it's a sign to us that the establishment still has a lot of power. This death, though it's exciting, and it's a sign of possibly good things to come, maybe, depending on how much we're able to take control of it and seize the opening window that's literally opening more seemingly every year now for us, we still have a huge uphill battle. And we can't take it for granted, and we can't rest on our laurels, and we really can't look at this as a win. This is not a win. This is just a sign that an opportunity is approaching us soon.